turn off your video and your microphone. So this meeting will be recorded and we will be putting it up on our YouTube channel, probably sometime over the weekend. So I want to welcome everybody here. We're going to have a great program. I met Maggie for the first time just today, but she is a wonderful person and she is traveling and juggling all these things electronic, and it's a great thing. The Ocean Conservancy this month is actually celebrating their 50th anniversary. So if you weren't all muted, you could all give a big woohoo and a round of applause. If you want to practice your Zoom skills and put a little applause in your Zoom emoji, that would be fine. If you have any questions tonight, please put them in the Zoom chat. Gail Ladd is going to be our chat monitor tonight. So we will take a break partway through and at the end of the program to try to get to everyone's questions or comments in the chat. So if you've been here for a while or if you're just new, we have a wonderful website that Valerie has been keeping up to date. It's kind of a mouthful as far as typing in all that, but if you type in Sierra Club-Loxahatchee group in your browser, you will get brought to this page. So I encourage you to do that to learn everything Sierra Club. At the bottom of the homepage, you will see a calendar of events, and you can see in our area, we have 25 upcoming activities already scheduled. So if you have some spare time or you want to do something, chances are you'll be able to find something to do on the website. We have a lot of committees, and so then we have a lot of committee meetings. So this is just a brief rundown of some of the upcoming committee meetings. Everyone can read. We have a conservation committee October the 5th. We are having a planning meeting for the Thanksgiving party, which we're going to talk about a little more in a minute, on October the 12th. The political committee is really getting busy for obvious reasons. We're in the middle of the election cycle, and if you're watching TV, you know that. And then our executive committee meeting is October the 13th, and that is open to all members. So go to the website for details. Glenn, who's on the call but muted right now, is our events chair. Oh, he can unmute and he can tell you all about the upcoming events. Would you like to do that, Glenn?
Sure, sounds great. We have the first one that's coming up is the 24th of this month, Saturday. It's in West Palm Beach. It was ready. It's the hold on. It's the electric car. Yes.
Glenn, look at the screen.
Yeah, I am. Oh, you got electric cars right in front of me. 24th, 9 to 1. It's at Manatee Lagoon. That's good. On Flagler. It's going to be a great event. You can learn about the electric cars and how they save for our planet and Eco Discovery Center. So it'll be a fun day. Come and join us. Lagoon Fest is all day, 9 to 3. So we'll be there all day in the waterfront at West Palm Beach. That's November 5th on a Saturday. A lot of activities are there to participate in, and we're going to have a full day event there. We have a table and a booth, and come and join us. Have a lot of fun outdoors. The big event, fundraiser and party, end of the year party, is going to be at the Community Foundation in West Palm Beach, November 12th, 6 to 10. You have to register in advance. Go onto our website and click on the registration for it and sign up. Tickets are going fast, so everybody should sign up quickly and get your reservations put in. We're going to have a lot of great gifts for the holidays, things that people want. You might have great gift ideas for your family and friends. You might want to buy them something. So that'd be a great way to do it. Thank you very much. Have a great time. You want to volunteer? Let me know. I'll put my phone number in the chat and you can call me or email me and let's get involved. We need more volunteers for that, for the events. And I thank you very much.
Thank you, Glenn.
You're welcome.
Okay, moving on to our Conservation Committee, which being the Sierra Club, obviously is one of our very important committees. And we have a number of things coming up. Everyone can read unless I guess you're on the phone, but we have something coming up September the 22nd, which is the Atlantic Commercial and Self-Storage Amendment that's going through Palm Beach County right now. The county commissioners will be voting on that on Thursday, September 22nd. So go to the 6th floor council chamber or email. We are trying to stop the Atlantic Commercial and Self-Storage Amendment. Palm Beach County has Matters by the Public every month. This month it's Tuesday, October the 4th, 2 o'clock. You get to speak for 3 minutes, fill in a card, show up, and it's a wonderful thing. You can talk about anything you want. Of course, I'm going to suggest you talk about environmental issues, but you can literally talk to the Palm Beach County Commissioners for 3 minutes once a month. The Agricultural Reserve, I'm sorry, Sue, is your hand raised or are you practicing something?
She's muted.
Yeah.
Sue,
if you could-
you're muted. You have to unmute in order to talk.
Or if you could see the chat
There
at
we
the
go.
bottom of your screen there. Okay.
There we go. All right, that 3-minute thing with the commissioners where they let you get up and talk about anything you want. Do you really think it makes a difference, or are they just doing it for like a show play to say, hey, look, we let you talk to us? Does it really make a difference? Because it's really about not anything specific, just anything you want, you know?
Well, what we do is we speak at the Matters by the Public, and then we follow up with emails to the commissioners, and we follow up with in-person and Zoom meetings one-on-one with the commissioners. So the idea is to create a relationship with these commissioners, and hopefully we will be able to convince them.
It
Obviously,
just seems like anything that happens does so little good, does nothing. It's like it always falls on deaf ears.
well, until we figure out a way to solve that problem, we're doing the best we can, I'm afraid. I mean, we need to get out there and vote,
I mean,
right?
yeah, but hey, they run 2 consecutive 4-year commissions. There's nothing you can do to get them out in the meantime. It's not like you can vote them out at the end of a year or end of 2 years. You know, they're like got the power of God for 4 years.
Well,
That's what I mean. These like,
so that's the system we've got, I'm afraid. You're gonna have to run for office and try to change it, I guess.
all right, yeah, I guess.
The Agricultural Reserve, for people that are familiar with that, it has been postponed until May 2023. So stay tuned for next steps. And Martin County Rural Lifestyles unfortunately did pass. So the Martin County Commissioners did not vote the way we wanted to, but we are considering next steps and we will have to see what we can do.
Yeah.
So I have a big announcement for the Stop the Burn rally, which is going to be Saturday, October the 1st. And that is going to be from 4 until 6 o'clock down at Clematis Street, right across from Florida Crystal's corporate headquarters. And make a poster, wear Sierra Club bling, and show up. A couple of us are carpooling, but try to show up and get some attention and make some noise, get into some good trouble, if you will. So this is a list of our Sierra Club endorsed candidates. There will be more information in our newsletter coming out October the 1st. Obviously, you can't vote in all these districts, but hopefully you have your new voter registration card and become familiar with what districts you're in. So then you can make sure that you are voting for some of the Sierra Club endorsed candidates.
I want to get rid of my hand here. I don't know how to do it. Oh, there. Okay. Yeah, all right.
Okay. Okay, just so you know, you're being recorded.
Okay.
We would like to welcome any volunteers to join us. We do have some new volunteers even on the call tonight, so welcome. And please join us.
I'm from the Miami group. My name's Jim Gross. And you haven't mentioned it yet, but October 9th is a
And
tri-county.
Jim, look at the
Yes.
screen.
Pardon?
Look at the screen.
That's what I want. Thank you.
Okay. Patience, patience, we're getting there. October the 9th is the TriGroup meeting. This is a first-time event for Miami, Broward, and also the Loxahatchee group to meet all together in Broward. The Riverside Hotel is a Green Palms hotel. So there won't be any plastic, and they kind of walk the walk. So we're trying to, you know, have our events in areas that are responsible. Now, the bad news is registration closes tomorrow. So if you want to go to this event Sunday, October the 9th, from 4:30 to 7:30, we're going to have about an hour and a half of cocktails and light appetizers. And then we're going to go into the actual speaking part of the presentation, which is Decision 2022 by Denise Elliott, and she's with the League of Women Voters. If you do not register by the end of tomorrow, it will be $25 at the door. Right now, registration is free, but the hotel needs a count and we need a count. So that's why registrations are closing tomorrow. So we can make sure we get all the food we need and make the proper arrangements. But since it's Sunday, feel free to take Brightline or Tri-Rail, go down and walk around on Las Olas Boulevard and enjoy a beautiful day. But then be sure to be at the Riverside Hotel at 4:30. And as Glenn mentioned, our big fundraising event is our Thanksgiving celebration, which is going to be Saturday, November the 12th, 6 to 10, and that is in downtown West Palm Beach. These things are all on the website, so mark your calendar and we hope to see you then. We've started this a couple of months ago. We're going to have a mystery question at the end of the presentation. This is going to be your chance to win this fabulous book, Finding Eco Happiness, written by our own Sandy Schwartz, who is our newsletter editor and helps us with proofing all kinds of things. And she is just a fabulous author and a wonderful newsletter editor. And so you need to pay attention. And at the end of the presentation, we're going to ask a question, and whoever gets the correct answer in the chat first wins the book. Gail, does anyone have any questions? And you might have to unmute if you see anything in the chat.
We have someone, let's see, Kay wants to know if anyone signed up for October 9th and she'd like to go, but she'd like to carpool.
We have about 20 people already signed up. And Kay, if you talk to me tomorrow, not during the meeting, I will be glad to share some names that might be in the Delray Beach area, which I think is where you live, and you can maybe work something out.
Oh, where does she live? I'm in Heritage Farms. I'm in like West Lake Worth. Maybe I can pick her up and take her with me.
Are you registered?
Well, no, I'm going. Are you talking about the
October the 9th.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I was thinking of something else. Sorry.
Okay.
I was talking about the protest next week from
Ah.
Saturday.
Oh, well, she might be
I'm
looking
probably
for a
going,
carpool.
Kay. Kay, it's Sheila. I'm expecting to go, so we definitely could, you know, pick you up and then go from there.
Okay, if someone would like to carpool, if they want to reach out to me, I have the registration lists for the October 9th event. I do not have a registration for the rally, for the protest, because Patrick Ferguson is doing that. And as far as I know, it's all being done through Facebook.
Okay.
Okay, so Gail, if there's nothing else in the chat,
I got a question.
oh, Glenn,
Could we get a donation for Riverside Hotel for our party?
we tried to get a donation for the October 9th.
Oh,
Ah,
so if we're using the space now, we were getting stuff from them. So maybe they could give us an overnight donation or something.
yep.
No?
I don't know if we can, I don't know if it's right to double dip.
Okay, just asking.
Okay, I appreciate the enthusiasm.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, any other chats?
No more chats.
Okay, thank you, Gail.
You're
So
welcome.
without further ado, I'm going to invite Maggie or introduce Maggie Winchester. Maggie is based in Miami. She received a Master's of Science from the University of Massachusetts, Dartmouth, where she studied fish physiology, and she has taught an undergraduate course on shark conservation and biology at Shoals Marine Laboratory for the last 5 years. She is passionate about educating the public on ocean conservation issues and working with communities to create healthier, more sustainable ecosystems. She is also fascinated with unique animals and their ecosystems. In 2019, she was able to visit Greenland to study the rare Greenland shark physiology. And this year she visited the Galapagos Islands, both of which she hopes to return to one day. Maggie has worked with the International Seakeepers Society, the Bonefish and Tarpon Trust, and the Cape Eleuthera Institute in the Bahamas. She is a critical member of the Florida program and for the Ocean Conservancy, and will work with them to advance our water quality, reduce marine debris, and climate-related priorities throughout the state of Florida. So
Great.
without further ado, or everybody can give a nice round of applause for Maggie. I have stopped sharing my screen, so hopefully this will all work and you can share your screen.
All right. Can you hear me?
I can
Yep.
hear you. Your screen is
Perfect.
not large. There you go.
There we go.
Now it's working perfectly.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that introduction, Linda. And thank you everyone for taking the time this evening to come and listen to what we've got going on at Ocean Conservancy. So kind of some of the stuff that you've heard already just about me. My name's Maggie Winchester. I am a recent addition to the Ocean Conservancy, and I'm very excited to be joining the organization and tell you about the awesome work that they're doing in general, but specifically in Florida. I do have a Master of Science. My research for my master's was really focused on understanding how fish respond to catch and release. So I was looking at physiological responses, but really it's how the fishes are being harmed or not being harmed by being caught and released. So first and foremost, I am a scientist, but I'm also an educator, both informal and formal. Informal around Florida, I've worked with a lot of different kids from underprivileged backgrounds, basically to get them out on the water and have them build a connection with the ocean so that they can understand why we want to protect it. Formally, I am an adjunct faculty member at Shoals Marine Laboratory in Maine, which is run by Cornell University and University of New Hampshire. And I do teach a shark conservation and biology course and have for the last 5 years. More about me in general, I am a scientist, I'm an educator, but all around, I'm a diver, I like to fish. I really just like doing anything that has to do with the ocean. And so that's why I joined the Ocean Conservancy, and that's why I'm here talking to you today. So I'm going to start this presentation just by telling you a little bit a little bit about who Ocean Conservancy is. Some of the information that I'm going to talk about with respect to Florida's threats are going to be very familiar to all of you, or most of you, I'm sure. But I'm going to go deep into basically what Ocean Conservancy is currently doing in Florida to address these issues. The goal of Ocean Conservancy is working with you to protect the ocean from today's greatest global challenges. So I'm just going to minimize my video so I can see my full screen here. A little bit more about Ocean Conservancy. We are the nation's oldest marine conservation nonprofit, and really we work at the nexus of science and policy. So we're really focused on using the best available science to inform policy and help make decisions. We're over 150 dedicated professionals in all different realms with all different levels of expertise. Some people, scientists, some attorneys, some policy and outreach experts, all coming together to work towards conserving the ocean. In addition to that, we also have a robust network of members, including over 250,000 contributing members, as well as over 3 million online ocean activists that follow us and follow our content. Our headquarters are in Washington, D.C. That's where the majority of our staff work, but we do have offices around the country and actually in different parts of the world as well. Unlike Sierra Club, we aren't chapter-based. We are more program-based, so we're all kind of working on the same programs, whether our office is in DC or in Florida. But we do have offices in Washington, DC, in Alaska, in Washington State, in Oregon, in California, Texas, and then our headquarters in Florida is in St. Petersburg, which is actually where I am right now. So I'm here for a workshop that we have going on at our Florida headquarter office, but we also have offices in Miami and Jacksonville, and I have been living in Miami for the last 3 years. So that's kind of the area that I've been working in. So I'm going to tell you about some of the broader priorities that Ocean Conservancy is focused on at the moment before I get into what specifically is going on in Florida. So one of our programs is focused on the Arctic with the goal to improve conservation measures and minimize the impact of rapid industrialization, with a specific emphasis on preserving indigenous culture and the remarkable wildlife of the Arctic. In 2017, the U.S. Coast Guard adopted our recommendations for protecting the Bering Sea and Strait areas from the dangers of increased shipping. And in Canada, we're working with Oceans North to create a network of marine protected areas comprising 10% of Canada's Arctic Ocean. So that's a little bit about the work that we're doing in the Arctic. We also have a large fish conservation program, really focused on preserving and regenerating U.S. fish stocks. Since the 1970s, our fisheries, we know, have taken some hits. And so we're really focused on the Gulf of Mexico, the Pacific coast, and working at the federal level to make sure that fish are getting the preservation that they really need. Another large aspect of our program is trash-free seas. We've made significant strides in reducing marine debris around the world. And Ocean Conservancy remains a leader on the issue of marine debris with a goal of 50% reduction in ocean plastics by 2025. This is something that I'm going to kind of talk more about because, as we know, that does relate to Florida. And then, of course, I'm going to talk specifically about what we're doing in Florida. Like I said, we have 3 offices in Florida, and our Florida program is expanding constantly, which is really exciting because, as we know, there's a lot of things going on in Florida. There's a lot of issues that need to be addressed. So I'm going to start by just kind of talking about our focus areas. So within Florida, basically any projects that we take on, we aim for them to fall in these buckets of work, that being ocean trash, water quality, carbon pollution, education and outreach, and marine wildlife. So I'll tell you about some of the projects that we're doing, but they primarily are all going to fall under these categories. So let's talk about Florida now. We all know that Florida is very special, but there's a reason why Ocean Conservancy, which is such a large company, is focused on this area. Florida's special. It has over 8,000 miles of coastline, which is actually the second largest amount of coastline for states, the first being Alaska and then Florida being second, having over 8,000 miles. If you are in Florida, the furthest you can possibly be from the coast at any given time is 60 miles. So no matter where you are, you're never more than 60 miles away from the coast. $14 billion are made by ocean professionals every year. So the annual wages in ocean related jobs is 14 billion. And then of that, 83% of ocean jobs are actually in tourism and recreation. So there's a huge investment in the ocean in Florida, and for good reason. Within Florida, there's 3 primary ecosystems that are very important. The first being mangroves. Mangroves are plants that are very important to coastal ecosystems, not only because they provide shelter, they can survive in salt water and create structure on our coastlines, but they also solidify the seafloor and can cause stabilization and basically prevent hurricanes and big storms from making it to land, acting as a buffer. In addition to that, they are food and shelter for many different species of fish because they have those roots protruding into the water, like you can see in this photo. It makes it a nice little maze where little fish can hide from big predators, and it's actually a great nursery ground. It's great nursery for many species, but especially a lot of our favorite commercial species, including snook, tarpon, and many other species of snapper and grunt. Mangroves are also really important habitats for oysters, sponges, and other species that filter the water. And of course, I don't need to tell you why that's important, because we want clear water, so we want those animals that are filtering the water to be there. Another ecosystem that is really important and large in Florida is coral reefs. Coral reefs make up, or the Florida Reef Tract is 360 miles long, which is the largest reef tract in North America, and it's also the 3rd largest in the world. So we have this very large Florida Reef Tract, and that acts as food and habitat for a significant portion of Florida's commercial and recreational fish. About 25%, or 1 in 4 fish, spends time on coral reefs during some part of their life cycle. So almost all, well, a quarter of all fish rely on this ecosystem. And then in addition to that, diving, fishing, and viewing coral reefs generates $6 billion in local sales and about 70,000 local jobs. So you can see why this ecosystem is critical. Finally, seagrasses are another very important ecosystem that we have here. Not only are they food for manatees, sea turtles, and conch, but they also act as a nursery for some species as well, including snapper, grouper, spiny lobster, sea trout, and blue crabs. So those animals are able to use especially thick bunches of seagrass can provide really great habitats for these young animals. In addition to that, they also stabilize the seafloor and help improve the water clarity of the ecosystem. Of course, in Florida, recreational and commercial fishing is also very important, and that is a very big economic driver. Florida is #1 in recreational fishing world records. Every year, or this number comes from 2016 and 2017 specifically, but 1.8 million saltwater recreational licenses were issued by the state of Florida. There are more recreational fishermen in Florida than in any other state. 88% of national commercial spiny lobster landings are from Florida. And again, in 2016, 98 million pounds of fish and shellfish were landed by Florida commercial fishermen. This is a very important economical factor. This is something that Florida is known for, and it's a huge reason why we need to conserve it, because these populations we need to take care of if we want to maintain these fisheries. In 2016, the top 4 commercial species were the spiny lobster, bringing in $54 million, the red grouper bringing in $53 million, shrimp bringing in 45, and stone crab bringing in $30 million. And the point being here, it's not one part of Florida that is really important for fishing. Each of these different species can come from different parts, and really they spread across Florida where they're all coming from, and that's really important in across Florida. No matter where you are, the fisheries are important. And so now, kind of talking about why Florida is important. I'm sure we all know that because we can experience the oceans, we can experience these amazing things for ourselves, but there's also a lot of environmental issues. And I do expect some of you to be familiar with these, but I'm going to talk about some of the issues Florida is currently facing, and specifically what the Ocean Conservancy is doing to address some of these issues. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is water quality and abundance. So here there's 2 different photos. The first where it says past, this is the historic water flow, or the historic flow of water over the Everglades. So historically, water flowed from north of the Okeechobee Lake and flowed south over the Everglades down out of the south of Florida. Over time, for various reasons, there was land development, people moving to the coastlines, and water had to be diverted and channelized. So as more people moved to the coastlines, as more of South Florida became agricultural land, water was diverted east and west, as well as down south. And so this is what our water flows look like in the present. This is problematic because when water was flowing over the Everglades down from Lake Okeechobee, this provided great filtration for that water. So the water was flowing over the grasses in the Everglades, what we call the river of grass, getting filtered, and by the time it got to South Florida, it was crystal clear and beautiful water that you could drink, clear, fresh water. When water was diverted into these channels and these canals, you lose that filtration. First of all, there's not grasses that are cleaning that water, but also that water gets dirtier as it picks up sediments, as more industrialization leaks pollution into those canals. And so what you end up having is, especially these canals that are heading east and west, you have a very concentrated amount of pollution ending up at the mouth of those rivers. Down in Biscayne Bay, so similar things in South Florida are happening, and I'm going to talk more about that. But at the same time, because the fresh water is not flowing over the Everglades are not getting as much water as they need to. They're not staying healthy. And so really you just have ecosystem degradation happening at many, many different levels. And so some of the impacts of this are harmful algal blooms. So I'm going to talk about some of the different harmful algal blooms that we face here in Florida, the first being red tide. Now, red tide is something that is naturally occurring. If we weren't contributing anything, there would still be red tide. It would not be nearly as severe as we see today. Red tide has large scale blooms when all of the conditions are just right and there's enough nutrients present for all of the algae to basically have lots of food and become incredibly abundant. Red tide is particularly scary because it's incredibly toxic, not only to wildlife, but also to humans. So here in this photo, of course, this is a map of Florida, and the dark red patch is from the red tide bloom that happened in 2017, 2018. So the square mileage of that deep red blob highlighted here is actually about the size of Connecticut. So it was a very, very large bloom. And with a bloom that large, there was a lot of basically mass wildlife death because this red tide is so toxic. Even though this area is well known for having red tide blooms, it also happens in other parts of Florida. So these pinker areas, these kind of medium red areas, those are also areas where red tide has bloomed in the past. And then the pink highlights everywhere that we have seen red tide in Florida. So it has happened almost everywhere in Florida, even though we tend to think of it really being focused on the West Coast. Next, we also have blue-green algae, which is something that you might see over in your area. So the blue-green algae forms basically because of a lot of nutrients building up in Lake Okeechobee, which are then released into the rivers going east and west. And all of that nutrient buildup, when there's enough sunlight and the temperatures are warm, it creates a massive bloom. So again, it's pollution ending up in Lake Okeechobee that when released, all of a sudden it just has everything it needs to create a gross blue-green slime on the top of the water surface. Not only does it block sunlight, so that makes it so things like seagrass, plants can't grow, and that ends up starving fish, but also it's an algae, and so algae consume oxygen, and so it lowers the amount of oxygen that's available for fish to breathe. In addition to all of that, it also makes humans sick. So it's something, again, we do not want in our water, but it's we're seeing it in very specific places because of the flow of water that we have created. And then finally, brown algae, which is highlighted up here primarily in the Indian River Lagoon. This is an algae that, again, it's caused by excess nutrients, but it creates a really gross, thick muck on the bottom of the water, which basically covers up seagrass and without seagrass, a lot of animals don't have anything to eat. So it basically, even though it's not horribly toxic to humans, it can starve wildlife. And so I just want to connect some of these algae blooms kind of with the flow of water. So this is a photo taken from Sanibel. This is a 5-foot Goliath grouper. This was actually from the 2017-2018 red tide bloom. This is one fish, but there were many, many, many other animals that were impacted by this event. And I've highlighted where on the map Sanibel is, and you can kind of see, that's where, even though red tide is naturally occurring, all of the nutrients that are being funneled from all of these areas, all of the pollution that's going down that canal and ending up at Sanibel is contributing and making these red tide events even worse than they would be normally. And then this is a photo from the St. Lucie River. Again, I have it highlighted, or the approximate location highlighted on a map. And again, all of this nasty, nasty green algae is coming basically from Lake Okeechobee because we're directing the water that way, and that's where we're releasing too many nutrients, too many pollutants. And this is a photo in Biscayne Bay. So this is more effects of the changed flow of water, but at the same time, this is not a harmful algal bloom that caused a massive fish kill in 2020, but it was still way too many nutrients being funneled down from Lake Okeechobee, going through the Miami River and ending up in Biscayne Bay with way too many nutrients and pollutants. Algae thrived, and there was a massive algae bloom that was not toxic to humans and not toxic to fish, but with such a large scale algae bloom, basically the algae consumed all of the oxygen in the water. And so there were scientists going out into the field and measuring oxygen levels in the bay and seeing oxygen levels of 0. No oxygen. And so this is a photo of the result of no oxygen in the bay due to way too many pollutants showing up.
Maggie,
So
is a lot of this stuff coming from fertilizer runoff?
some of it is, yeah. So I was going to talk a little bit more, but yeah, so the sources of pollution primarily are some of it is
And-
fertilizer, some of it is septic tanks and sewer systems, stormwater drains that are leaking.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, like, maybe too much pavement, there's no place for rainwater and stuff to get absorbed into the ground.
Potentially. The 4 sources that we usually, at least in Miami, that we attribute to pollution are usually, in Miami specifically, we have very outdated septic systems, very outdated and broken sewer lines. Fertilizer is a problem, but I'm going to talk about what Miami's doing to address that. And then
Yeah, I wouldn't think Miami's got too many septics left at this point, really.
you would be surprised. There's actually a large number, but they are pretty much all underwater. They're not filtering the way that they're supposed to. So we have a lot of sewage going directly into Biscayne Bay, which is very sad. We actually, as kind of a side note, we actually have an app, like a phone app called Swim Guide, and people will go and test the water, like chemically test the water in different locations, common swimming areas every week. And this app will show you if it's safe to get in the water. So if you're going to the beach, you check the app and it'll tell you if the water is safe or if there's too much bacteria and essentially like fecal matter in the water. Yeah, it's really sad. I don't have a lot in Biscayne Bay in this presentation, but I'm happy to chat more about that later because I have a lot of
I just wanted to ask about the fertilizer runoff, Anyway. Anyway, I'm sorry for interrupting, but I had to ask that.
No problem. I'm going to talk more about the fertilizer issue in a moment.
All right, anyway, carry on, Maggie. Thank you.
Of course, of course.
I'm sorry for interrupting. I won't do it again, but I will ask you something about garbage later on.
Okay, sounds good. So on that note, some of the solutions that we're working towards to solve some of these issues. The biggest thing that would be the most helpful is basically if we're looking at how the water in the Everglades used to flow and how it's currently flowing, restructuring the flow of the water would be the best thing we can possibly do. This is, of course, going to be really challenging, but there's some efforts in place that are currently going on. So one thing I also want to note is in this photo that shows the future, notice that this image, what we're striving for, is not the same as what the original water flow in Florida used to be. That's because that's not something that is realistic or achievable. There's a lot more people that live in Florida now. However, at least reducing some of the water that's going east and west and increasing the amount of water that's going directly down over the Everglades could really help with preventing the amount of pollutants going east and west, and also getting the water cleaner so that when it goes over the Everglades, it gets cleaned and the nutrients are removed and less pollutants get to our coastlines. So in order to do that, Ocean Conservancy is very supportive of, there's a comprehensive Everglades restoration plan that's currently in the works. Basically, the goal of this is to restore the wetlands that will help retain water and increase the filtration. So that's restoring the wetlands kind of in the south of
Keyboard's still
Florida.
working.
But also modifying infrastructure. In this case, I have a photo here of a road that was raised and bridged in order to help the flow of water. So this is actually the Tamiami Trail, which is running basically all across the Everglades. And with that trail right there, it typically just ends up blocking the flow of water. But by raising and bridging some parts of this road, you can actually allow some of the original flow of water to continue, which is really helpful. So doing more of that would be very beneficial for the flow of water over the Everglades. Another thing that would be very helpful is reducing pollution. So updating leaking infrastructure such as stormwater systems, sewers, and septic tanks is very important. That takes a lot of money, especially for cities that are very outdated. Miami is one of those cities where we've actually established a report card for Miami. Miami has a report card on how well they're doing for their septic systems and a lot of their leaking infrastructure. And the short answer is they're not doing well, and there isn't much going into checking and making sure that things are staying updated. And as such, we have a lot of infrastructure that is extremely leaky, not even just a little bit, like completely submerged in groundwater at this point. But one thing that we can control that is not as expensive as updating entire infrastructure is controlling some of the nutrient inputs, specifically agriculture and resident landscape runoff. This is something that Miami has actually tackled. In the summer months, there's really no good reason to put fertilizer on your lawn because in 24 hours, it's just going to get washed off. We get thunderstorms pretty much every day. There's plenty of water. The lawn just doesn't need additional fertilizer in order to grow. And so it's a waste of fertilizer, but also it's more nutrients that are going directly into the water source.
Yep.
And so Miami actually implemented a ban on fertilizer use during the summer months. And although this is something that's very hard to enforce, they're working with companies like Home Depot and Lowe's in order to put signage up so that people know that they're not supposed to be doing that because there's no reason to. And so that's an effort to prevent more of that, that pollution from getting into our water supply. So of course, another issue that we're facing is ocean trash. So every year, about 11 million metric tons of plastics enter our ocean, and that's adding to the estimated 200 million metric tons that are already present.
Working.
Oh, I think I might just mute. Oh, okay, we're good. And of course, we know that we don't want to see plastic in our oceans or on our walkways, but also plastic is really, really bad for wildlife. In fact, plastic has been found in 100% of sea turtle species when they've been, either a sea turtle washes up and their stomach's been opened and looked at. 100% of sea turtle species that have been identified have had plastics in their stomachs. 50% of all marine mammals, including manatees, dolphins, have been found with plastic in their stomach. 59% of seabirds like albatross and pelicans have been found with plastic in their stomach, and 25% of fish sampled from seafood markets around the world have shown some sort of trace of plastic. So this is a very prevalent issue. It's showing up everywhere. And really what we need to do is reduce the amount that we're putting out there. However, one of the things that we're doing specifically is trying to get it off the coastlines. And this is not only a way of removing the trash, but also getting people involved and showing them their impact and allowing them to really connect with the issue and see products that they're using in their daily lives on the beach or in the waterway. So the International Coastal Cleanup is a program that we have been running for 37 years. The 37th International Coastal Cleanup was actually this past weekend, and it's a huge effort. People from all over the world basically get together on that day, wherever they are in the world, and they clean their community. So over the last 37 years, but not including this cleanup that just happened this past weekend, we've engaged 17 million volunteers, removed over 350 million pounds of trash, covered 396 miles of coastline. There have been cleanups in 153 different countries. And what's really special about the International Coastal Cleanup is we encourage everyone to participate in citizen science and use an app to basically track what kind of things they're picking up. And doing that allows us to see not only how many things are out there, but what specific items are causing problems. And so I'm going to share a little bit about that with you now. So the last 5 years in the last 5 years of our over 30-year history of organizing this cleanup, all of the top 10 items that we have picked up have been made of plastic. So the top 10 items that we usually see, and this is in Florida, but this is also kind of across the board. The number one item is always cigarette butts. For the last 35 years, cigarette butts have been number one. Or the last 36 years. I can't say about this past weekend, but those numbers will come in slowly. Last 36 years, cigarette butts have been the number one item that have been picked up, followed by plastic food wrappers, plastic beverage bottles, plastic bottle caps, plastic grocery bags, other plastic bags, straws, stirrers, plastic takeout or takeaway containers, plastic lids, and then foam takeout or takeaway containers. These are always seen at cleanups, and these are the items that we really strive to reduce because that's what we're seeing every time we go out and clean. Another thing that we're doing to deal with the trash problem in Florida specifically is understanding circularity. So we have been conducting assessments. We have been working with the University of Florida to basically understand where plastics are coming from, where they're going, where they're ending up, who's using them, what is being used, basically understanding the life cycle of plastic in our community. The assessment, basically, it is a large assessment that includes litter surveys, store audits. It includes interviews with random members of the public. It includes all sorts of things to understand where plastics are fitting into our society. But what's really important about this model is it allows us to come up with actionable items. It identifies areas that are in desperate need of improvement, but it mostly works with the community to understand what is needed in specific areas. So the first assessment that we did was in Miami, and I'm going to share some of the actionable items that our community group came up with based on the results of that assessment. But this is also something that we're doing in other parts of Florida. We are working with the city of Orlando to do an assessment there. We just had the fieldwork completed for an assessment in the Keys. The next one is going to be Pinellas County, and then we're hoping to continue doing more of these assessments around Florida so that we can understand not only the circularity in different communities, but specifically what each community needs on a local level in order to address their specific problems. So I'm going to share basically the results of our assessment in Miami. So basically a group of community members who care about this issue came together, sat down, looked at the results, spent 12 hours or more identifying the key things that we need to do in order to improve circularity in Miami. The first was focused on what the government can do. So the government leaders can use their power to help the ocean. Ways that they can do that, requiring extended producer responsibility and alternative delivery systems, specifically for companies that are using a lot of plastic. They should be putting the responsibility back on the producer so that, you know, if they're the ones that are creating so much of the waste, they need to find a way to deal with it. It shouldn't be ending up in our community. And also we want them to prioritize updating stormwater systems and maintaining those systems, but also educating the public on why it's important, why we need to update our septic systems and all of these, you know, all these places that we need to put money into. We need to tell people why we even want to do that. We can't expect people to just get on board. And so putting money into educating the public about how to, you know, keep stuff out of stormwater drains, what they can do to reduce pollution into the bay is very important. On the civic level, they also identified a couple specific action items with the idea that together residents and government officials can have a large impact. The first thing that they identified was we need to be investing in outreach specifically to underprivileged communities and communities that are not usually working with the government. We also need to increase waste management and recycling staff. And this is actually so that there's more people who can talk to community members and understand the problems in each specific part of a city and understand what needs to be taken care of. On the individual level, residents can take lead and make a change. We need to be incorporating more of this information into public schools and curriculum, and all around make sure that kids are understanding environmental issues from a younger age. In Miami specifically, we really need to provide more information to boaters and tourists so that they can understand their impacts and understand, you know, everyone is just trying to enjoy the water. We should all be able to do that without harming the water, and providing information can help with that. And then finally, just supporting the children that want to take action and want to spearhead things like cleanups and create events that are going to bring people in contact with the ocean and are going to cause people to see their physical impact and see the amount of trash that is on the beaches or in their parks. And just supporting those kids and, you know, making them feel like they can make a difference, because really we all just need to work together in order to deal with pollution and plastic pollution specifically. Some other things that we're dealing with in Florida, sea level rise and flooding are a big issue, especially in South Florida, but in other parts as well. These are just some stats for you about flooding in Florida. 20,000 Floridians are currently living in homes that are at risk of chronic flooding. We are predicted to see 15 inches of sea level rise in the Florida Keys by 2045, which is massive. The cost of keeping seawater off of Miami Beach for the next 20 years is about $400 million. The value of tourism at stake in the Florida Keys due to increased flooding is $2.2 billion. And 75% of hospitals and 65% of schools in South Florida are currently at risk of chronic inundation. So this is a really big issue. Not only are we seeing we're seeing massive king tides, and we're seeing massive storm surge, but we're seeing flooding from just everyday rainstorms. This is a photo from Miami Beach that's a real photo of an octopus that was in a storm drain and just kind of climbed out into a parking lot or parking garage and was just kind of crawling around. We're seeing more of these crazy types of things happening. This is a photo in St. Petersburg, where I am right now, of sunny day flooding. So this was a king tide event, and this isn't really that close to the water, but they still experience this crazy flooding. And this is another photo from Gulfport, which is near St. Petersburg. It's becoming so normal to see saltwater flooding that we already have signs ready to go. It's not something new anymore. We're getting used to the fact that when there's a king tide or when it rains a little bit more than usual, there's going to be salt water on our roads. And I don't have to tell you why we don't want salt water on our roads. Living in Miami, I see this all the time. We don't even need to get a hurricane or a tropical storm. If we just get a lot of rain, then our streets look like this, and cars have to drive through that, and cars don't take salt water well. And it damages shops, it gets into people's homes. There's just a lot of damages that happen due to the saltwater flooding. And that isn't even during a tropical storm. That isn't even the effects of storm surge. That's just sunny day flooding where there's been a little bit more rain or a higher tide than usual. And of course, we're seeing a lot more extreme weather here in Florida as well. These are photos from Hurricane Michael, which was, I'm going to show another photo of the path of that hurricane, but really this hurricane had large inland effects, which we don't always expect with hurricanes. There were 6.5 million people relocated by Hurricane Irma. 40% of all U.S. hurricanes usually hit Florida. $50 billion in damage was done by Hurricane Irma in 2017, which was the costliest in Florida history. And there are 16 million Floridians living in areas that are in high risk from tropical storms and hurricanes. It's not just the coastlines. This is a photo from Bluntstown, and this is from Hurricane Michael. So this is a very inland area. And this is the track of Hurricane Michael. And you can see it did damage well into the state. So this wasn't even a coastal issue anymore. Hurricanes are a real threat wherever you live in Florida now. Not only are we seeing these hurricanes going into places that they didn't used to, but we're seeing more and more intense hurricanes than we ever have before. So this is the 2020 hurricane season. I'm sure you all don't want to remember that. It was a shock for me to look at this again after it's been a few years. But yeah, the 2020 hurricane season, we ran out of names, first of all, normal names. We had to move to the Greek alphabet, which starts, you can see at alpha, but it didn't even start to trail off at that point. You can see tropical storms in this image are indicated by the orange, just normal hurricanes, small hurricanes are indicated by the red, and then the major hurricanes are indicated by purple. And we're actually seeing more major hurricanes later in the season. So it's not even that it was trailing off at that point. Our last hurricane of the season was a Cat 5. So we're seeing so many more storms. They're more powerful than ever. So really, Florida needs your help. These are all issues that we're dealing with. These are some of the things that Ocean Conservancy is currently working on. What you can do in order to help save Florida, we need all hands on deck. We need to work together. So the first thing we do, we need to roll up our sleeves and get to work. And I know most of you are doing that, and I thank you for your work. Ways that you can do this: joining a cleanup, going and seeing what kind of items are showing up on our shorelines, in our parks. No matter where you are in Florida, you're no more than 60 miles from a coastline. So even if you are relatively landlocked, any litter that ends up on the ground is going to make its way to the ocean eventually. So wherever you can do a cleanup, See what's on the ground, see if you can make a change in your life, and try and reduce one thing each year. You know, try to use less plastic bags this year and try to eliminate straws next year. I have skip the straw on here as well, since I just mentioned it. Straws are a huge item that we see in our data from International Coastal Cleanup Day. And really, there's a lot of alternatives that are available now. You can get metal straws, you can get silicone straws, or even if you're okay with the paper ones, I know those tend to dissolve sometimes, but it's better than plastic in the long run, because plastic isn't going to break down. It's going to stay in our oceans and on our earth for forever, really, because plastic doesn't disappear. It just gets smaller. Another thing you can do is educate yourself, and that's what you're doing right now. And again, I thank you for that. Learning about the issues that are going on in your specific area is very important, especially because knowing what's going on, you can have a bigger impact, and you can feel confident in talking to others and educating others and getting more people on board. So learn about the issues and tell other people about them too. If you're going to eat seafood, first of all, support local fishermen. Support your local economy instead of fishermen, or instead of fish that's being imported. So many Florida fishermen make their livelihood here. And if you're going to eat seafood, try and choose sustainable. So if it's being harvested here in Florida, that's probably going to be more sustainable than if it's being harvested somewhere else. So look into sustainable seafood options and choose those where you can. And we also need to ask the same of our elected officials. So I know there was a little bit of discussion about this at the beginning. My recommendations here are get to know your local government, not just who they are, but get to know them, go to the meetings, go and talk to them, learn what their priorities are, learn where you have areas of overlap, and try to see what you can do for your local area by understanding what they care about. And also tell them what you care about. If enough people are telling their elected officials about the things that they care about and environmental issues, eventually with enough people, you would hope that they would want to do something. So call, write, do whatever you can to make your voice heard. Go to meetings, provide comments, and make yourself heard. Make sure that people are listening to you. A really great example of this, and kind of like a high note to end on, is the past year, Ocean Conservancy was working in Tallahassee to basically, there was a preemption, or it had been banned to ban cigarette smoking in the state of Florida. So none of the local municipalities could create bans for their cities or their areas. However, Ocean Conservancy worked with Tallahassee and they got that ban on bans removed. So a couple weeks ago, one of our local councilmen one of our local commissioners introduced a bill that banned smoking cigarettes on public beaches in Miami Beach. And I was able to go to that meeting and I provided comment on behalf of Ocean Conservancy, and that bill got passed 5-1, which was very exciting. So talk to your local officials, see what they care about, see what you can do to work together and make a difference. And with that, thank you all so much for your time. And at this point, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Gail, would you like to read the questions in the chat?
Okay, so we have, does or is the Ocean Conservancy working with the Everglades Coalition?
That's a great question. I'm going to be honest. I have. Oh, what was that? I've only been with Ocean Conservancy for about a month now, so I can connect you with somebody. I can connect you with JP Brooker, the director of the Florida program, if you're interested in learning more, but I don't know off the top of my head if we're working with them. Sorry about that.
Okay, the next question is, what is the difference between your organization and Oceana?
So Oceana is another nonprofit. They are working in a similar space. I believe they
How do I get back
tend.
to this. This is weird. I don't like this.
Sue, are you talking to us?
No, I'm sorry. I'm messing with Zoom here and
Please mute yourself.
Okay.
Yeah, so Oceana is another nonprofit organization. The main thing that makes us different is Ocean Conservancy we're really focused on science. We have a large component dedicated to actually going and doing science. So like the assessments, the circularity assessments around Florida, that's science that we are working with the University of Georgia to actually collect data and understand the problem more. They rely on, the data that's already available. Whereas if we see a problem and we want to know more, we actually go out and put time into the research side of things, which of course there's benefit to both. Us putting more of our time into research means that we have less time to devote into other things. But yeah, it's just two different ways of operating, basically.
There was a question about the swim guide app. I looked it up on my phone and I believe it is called the Swim Guide.
Yes. Yeah, that is for Miami. For Miami and Fort Lauderdale, that's currently where the organizations are doing the sampling, because those are the areas that have, the nasty Biscayne Bay water frequently. Any other questions?
That's all I have in the chat.
yeah, I do. I can't seem to get myself back on the screen. I don't know what I did.
Sue,
sorry,
do you have a
again-
question? Do you have a question for the speaker, dear?
I sure do, and I can't seem to get myself back on the screen, and I can't go on chat and type it in. For some reason, my keyboard is not working.
Okay,
Yes,
well, we
Maggie,
can
I would
hear
like-
you.
Okay, Maggie, I would like to ask you, going back to the first two questions, please. Are you affiliated, Ocean Conservancy, are they affiliated with Nature Conservancy?
We are not. We're different organizations.
Okay, and also with all these beach cleanups and all the stuff that's floating up onto our beach shores and all the cleanups, I think that's wonderful and it's great, but it's almost like closing the barn doors after the animals get out. Can we not place more effort on finding out where and how this stuff is getting into the oceans? I kind of wonder if this isn't going back to all these cruise ships. There's nothing, is there anything to, any kind of something to monitor them and make sure they're not dumping out once they're 5 miles offshore?
That's a really great question. So,
I mean, I don't believe all this stuff is from lazy beachgoers that can't put their stuff in the trash can, or people dumping stuff on a street that's floating into the sewer system. I just don't believe it's people that are that lazy, people are pretty aware these days. It's got to be something like even boaters, they're pretty good about putting stuff in bags and taking it home and throwing it out when they get back on shore. I'm wondering if it isn't all from the cruise ships.
So I have a couple different parts of your question to answer. So as far as where it's coming from, first of all, this is a huge question. The beach cleanups are great, but you're absolutely right. The reality is I've done, 50 beach cleanups in the last couple of years. And what happens is we pick everything up, it goes to a landfill. Some of that gets blown back into the ocean and some ends up back on the beaches anyway. And That's not solving the problem, and we know that.
It's not.
But the beach cleanups are great because it raises awareness. So the idea is that we are stopping pollution at the source on the individual level. However, one thing that is kind of hard to wrap your brain around is even though big corporations are primarily, the cause of so much of this pollution, there is a lot of people that don't understand their impact. And I say this as somebody who's organized, like I said, 50 beach cleanups. And while I've been on the beach and I've had volunteers picking up hundreds of pounds of trash, there have been beachgoers 20 feet away from me throwing their cigarette butts in the sand, drinking from plastic cups and leaving it in a tree, and completely unaware, or like massive balloon arches or gender reveals or big parties. I see that stuff every week in Miami, and it shows that there's a large portion of the population that doesn't understand
Oh,
their
they still don't
connection
get
to
it.
the ocean.
Yeah,
And
they
that's
still
actually
don't-
what that assessment showed as well. So
Gosh.
what we're trying
All
to
right.
do is understand the whole picture, and that's what the circularity assessment is for, so that we can see through that assessment. We saw basically we did interviews with a lot of different people, and everyone kind of agreed that there was a lack of awareness. So that's
So,
one of the
Maggie,
problems.
that's a really small amount of it. I mean, for the amount of garbage that's on the beach, these gender parties and these beach parties. I mean, that doesn't account for the amount of garbage that's floating up on the beach. I've done these beach cleanups too. That just the amount of stuff that we haul off doesn't equal the amount of like a few beach parties and gender parties and stuff. What you're talking about, it doesn't. It's more to
Well-
it than that. It's coming in from someplace else. Maybe are some of
Sue.
these it's got to be from maybe the cruise ships. It's got to be
Sue.
from
Sue,
what?
our coast is 60 miles, all of Florida is only 60 miles away from the coast. And as Maggie said, if it is litter on your street, it will get into the storm drain, it will get into the canals, and it will end up in the river systems, and it will end up in the ocean. It's coming down the Mississippi. It's coming from other countries. The
Oh, so
US.
the bottom line is people in America are just plain pigs and trash and all over the place. Is that what
Yes.
is that what we're saying?
Yes.
No,
Yes,
that's also not. Yes and no. So
I pick up 30 pounds of trash every morning from probably a half-mile walk.
All right,
And-
because where I live, I'm fairly rural, and like I said, I do a lot of walking around here, and I don't see a lot of trash in my neighborhood at all.
But so this is why it's so important to assess different cities. So like with the circularity assessments, the results that we found in Miami was that areas that weren't very populated had incredibly high amounts of litter. And doing
Okay.
these assessments in different places, the goal is so that we can sit down and say, okay, this is what we found. This is where things are coming from. These are the brands that we're seeing. This is where those brands are originating. So it's focused on understanding the companies that are contributing, the individuals that are contributing, and it's really trying to understand the whole picture so that we can come up with recommendations. And like from our Miami assessment, one of the recommendations was put the focus back on the businesses. We're actually working on an initiative right now in Miami that connects students with business owners, and basically we train students to help business owners go plastic free. And so we're trying to give businesses the tools so that they don't have to use single-use plastic items in their day-to-day. So we see less takeout containers, so we see less cups and lids in our community, and that helps, reduce that issue. But also, on a larger scale, we need to be putting pressure, or our government needs to be putting pressure on the big companies. Another thing that Miami Beach did that is a huge win and is a great example of a municipality coming together. They had a contract with Coca-Cola for the last, I'm not sure, many, many years. And that contract ran out last year, and Coca-Cola just assumed that Miami Beach would just sign back on. However, Miami Beach decided that they wanted to negotiate if Coca-Cola was going to come back on, they needed to provide no plastic waste. All of their products needed to not contain plastic waste. That's no caps, no bottles. And Coca-Cola couldn't do that. And so Miami Beach signed a deal with Pepsi instead, who said that they could in fact provide zero plastic in their products. And so Miami Beach now their official vendor for all of their government buildings and anything government related is no longer plastic based. And these are like little things, but when you
know,
put them all
Maggie, there's
together,
still
it
other
has a
stuff.
bigger
Maggie, there's
impact.
still other stuff. There's a company called TELUS in Belglade. They make biodegradable products from sugarcane fibers. All right, they're biodegradable. They will disintegrate. We can use stuff like that.
Yep.
So
Well, we're gonna have to wrap it up here, I'm afraid. We still have to
Alright.
do the mystery question. Does anyone have any last questions? There was another one in the chat. How much advocacy work does Ocean Conservancy do?
yeah,
And
we
Kind of
I'll-
answered that.
Yeah, I'll recap that briefly. We do a large amount of advocacy work, as well as lobbying. So we have lobbyists in DC, in Tallahassee, and we also work with our local municipalities to basically pass things that are going to help the ocean. And that's a big part of Ocean Conservancy.
That's good. That's good. Do
Okay,
something
so-
to stop the ocean getting full of plastic. Do something to get some kind of control on the cruise ships. They're probably dumping shit in the water, I
Okay,
think.
so we're going
Let's
to.
prove it. Prove that
This
they're
is
not.
Drew. Can I just ask a quick question?
Sure.
Are you involved at all with the protection of the right whales and doing things to increase ropeless technology for lobster fishing?
You know, I believe we are doing work with protecting right whales, but that is probably more on the research side. So I could connect you with our research team if you'd like to hear more about what specifically we're doing. I'm really focused on the Florida program. So unfortunately, I don't know everything that's going on within Ocean Conservancy.
I'd really like to know if you could do that, and Linda can connect you with my email.
Okay, yeah. If you want to send me your email, I can get you connected with somebody.
Maggie, I'll have to do that for Drew
Okay.
since he's on the phone.
Okay,
Um,
gotcha.
Okay, so we're ready hopefully for the mystery question. Everyone's been paying attention. We've had some excellent questions and dialogues. And the mystery question is, what is the #1 item picked up in beach cleanups? So get
Oh,
typing.
I know the answer. I know
No,
the
get
answer.
typing, get
Oh.
typing.
Put it in the chat.
Put it in
Oh,
the chat. I can't. My keyboard's not working.
Okay, got it.
Kay, you are the winner.
no.
Not fair. My keyboard's not working.
Well, we can't do anything about
I
that. so-
knew. Hey, you beat me there.
Keyboard's not
Okay.
working.
So I am going to now.
Cigarette butts.
stop- I'm going to stop the recording.
I knew the
And
answer too.